Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was put in charge of the Kunoichi Inn and ended up in chaos with Tsunade Senju, Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Tenten, Tamari Shizune, Anko Mitarashi and Kurenai Yuhi Part 1. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. You're really leaving Shizune-sama? Asked Haruno Sakura sadly. She didn't want her fellow medic colleague to leave the inn. I'm not really leaving, Sakura-san, I just won't be around most of the time. Shizune explained to the pink-haired Kunoichi. But then who would take care of the inn? Yamanaka Ino asked, concerned. Worried about being stuck cleaning after the elder Junin, Mitarashi Anko. The rest of the girl also shared the same thought. Anko wasn't really particularly hard to live with. It's the mess that's usually left behind that's the problem. Depending mostly on what mood the special Junin was in. I've talked about it with Hokage-sama. Since I won't really have time to fulfill the duties of managing the place, Tsunade-sama informed me that another shall take over the place. I will still live in the inn but as a tenant. Not as the Kurinran manager, Shizune explained. So in other words you'll be replaced. Anko replied back lazily. She didn't really feel like attending the meeting but she was now rather interested in the discussion. Especially if her friend no longer runs the place. She will be at risk at losing her room, since no one wanted to let a special Junin like her rent a place. It was her overwhelming reputation that needs to be blamed, not that she minds either way what the village thought of her. I'm afraid so, Yuhi Kurenai answered for Shizune. But she can understand why Anko was now interested with the discussion. Her childhood friend was still suffering from prejudice from the village but she was glad that Shizune was still going to live with them. Ah, Anyo, I don't understand why you can't remain as our manager, Kurinran. I mean you will still be staying with us, right? Asked Hyuga Hinata. I'm afraid that with all my workload as Tsunade-sama's assistant and working at the hospital, I can no longer maintain my duties as Kurinran. It gets a little too much and it's taking a lot out of me. Shizune answered honestly. She was always exhausted and there are times that she just wants to just relax and rest without dealing with any more paperwork or worry about the inn's bills. The other girls seem to understand this. They all do try and do their share in maintaining the inn but with their missions, it just gets too hard sometimes to find time or even spend time for themselves. They also knew close to nothing about doing some repairs, but they really had no other place to go. They all got used to living with each other and had become as close as sisters to one another. So Shizune-san, any idea who our next Kurinran would be? Subaku Tamari asked. I have no idea, but then again knowing Tsunade-sama, I'm pretty sure she will not choose just anybody to entrust the inn. Shizune answered but felt awkward when a strange chill ran up and down her spine. I hope. Shizune whispered to herself. So when do we get to know who will be our new Kurinran? Tenten asked excitedly. She hopes that the new manger would be as cool as Shizune was. She will let me know today. That's why I have been asked to inform you girls. Shizune explained. Isn't it a bit late to tell us you're being replaced in the same day? Anko replied back rather annoyed at the last-minute notice. I know and I'm sorry but this is the only time I can get all of us here. The rest of the time everyone was away in their own missions or are elsewhere. Shizune explained. This is the only time I could gather all us together without having to repeat myself or ask someone else to relay the message. Makes sense to me. Tamari shrugged. Just then they heard the summoning bird from outside. I guess I have to go now. I guess I need to meet with the new Kurinran. I'll see you girls later. Shizune replied back before disappearing with a puff of smoke. Leaving the rest of the girls to talk about the recent turn of events. You want me to what? Naruto exclaimed. Jiraiya had dragged him to the Hokage tower, informing him that Tsunade wanted to speak to him. Naruto didn't really know what to expect but he certainly didn't expect this. Tsunade just sighed. You heard me. Fighting the urge to get irritated at the young blonde. He had recently came back and she had missed him dearly, but not even 5 minutes have passed since he had entered her office and she was already on the verge of strangling the hyperactive boy. But that's just wrong. It sounds like what Ero Sennin would do. Naruto once again exclaimed as he pointed at his perverted mentor, in case she had missed his point. Jiraiya on the other hand was amused. He had to give it to Tsunade. She sure knows how to surprise the number one surprising ninja. He let Naruto's barb slide for now. After all, his little protege was going to live in a Kunoichi inn, filled with one of Konoha's most beautiful and dangerous Kunoichis. He couldn't be any prouder of him than this moment. All he had to do was convince his young apprentice to take the job. After all, if Naruto was staying there, that means he could stay there too. Jiraiya began to blush at the more explicit pictures entered his mind and began to giggle rather deviously. Think of all the data he could gather from the Kunoichi inn. Tsunade's eye began to twitch at the sight of her former teammate. She can already guess what he was thinking. She was also getting annoyed at Naruto. While she was relieved that the boy was back and seemed to have been immune to her colleague's perverted habits, his constant rebuttal of her decision was getting on her nerves. She was the godime. Only Naruto had the nerve to ever argue with her and question her judgment. All the more reason for you to stay at the inn. You need to protect them from your sensei. Tsunade responded, raising her voice to get her point across to Naruto as she slammed her palms against her desk, almost breaking it in the process. But I'm a guy. Naruto protested angrily, stomping his foot for emphasis. Do you have anywhere else to stay? Tsunade asked him, already knowing the answer. She knew his place was sold long ago and she doubts that any inns or real estate would let him rent a place. The village still held a huge grudge against him. A fact she knew he also knew too well. No buts. I am the Hokage and my word is final. Tsunade replied back, cutting off Naruto's protests. Go with it, Naruto. Think of yourself and your sensei. Jiraiya replied back, encouraging Naruto to accept Tsunade's offer. I am. That's why I'm not going to accept this. Besides, they will kill me. Before turning his attention once again to Tsunade. Have you ever thought of that? You're going to make me live in an inn full of dangerous Kunoichis. Hot Kunoichis, Naruto. Extremely hot and dangerous Kunoichis. Jiraiya commented before Naruto's fist came in contact with his face. I don't care. I am going to die. Naruto panicked, ignoring the massive dent at the wall across the room where his punch had plastered Jiraiya against, knocking the old pervert unconscious and slightly twitching. Don't you even care that you're sending me to my death? He asked Tsunade as tears began to flow from his eyes. Yar, Naruto. Don't be so negative. I'm sure Shizune will not let anything happen to you, and as for Jiraiya, don't worry too much, Naruto, your sensei will not be staying with you. Tsunade explained, not looking at Naruto directly because she was still vulnerable to his puppy-eyed dog look. She knew if she looked at him, at his sad, big blue eyes, she might give in and actually find another place to put him in. Which only means more paperwork for her, that she really doesn't need. What? Both males cried out in unison. Jiraiya regained consciousness and just heard he will not be living with Naruto. Tears literally became like waterfalls as he pondered at the cruelty of such beauties being denied to him. Jiraiya, I need to speak to you about another mission. Naruto, this discussion is over, Tsunade replied back in her most commanding voice. She then began to call another ninja to escort Naruto outside her office. I will be with you shortly. She told him. Before Naruto could protest, Tsunade just pointed at the door. The look she sent him brooked no arguments unless he wanted to be knocked out through the walls of the Hokage Tower. So with a very undignified snort, he stomped outside the room. Letting his anger and annoyance build up, so he can continue arguing with Tsunade once she was finished with Jiraiya. What do you mean I can't live with Naruto? I'm his guardian. Jiraiya whined, thinking of lost opportunities as his mind began playing images of Kurenai, Enko and Shizune in seductive poses, wearing little clothing. He unconsciously began to drool at the thought. Tsunade ignored Jiraiya's whining and became very serious. Jiraiya, I've heard rumors that sound as trying to have an alliance with Akatsuki. Do you know anything about it? Jiraiya also became serious hearing the news. My contacts have told me that Sound is planning on having an alliance with Akatsuki, only so they can get their hands on the Jinchuriki. So far there is no proof on how accurate this rumor is. Jiraiya explained solemnly. I was afraid of this. Does Naruto know? Tsunade asked concerned. Naruto was now family to her. She would lose the will to live if something happened to him. It was Naruto that gave her the strength to live and the reason to keep living. Without him, her existence would be meaningless as before. No, he has no idea, Jiraiya replied back. He really did feel sorry for Naruto. It seems that fate really dealt him a bad hand. I want you to deal with this. Find out everything you can. I can't let this rumor go unscrutinized. Tsunade ordered. What about Naruto? Jiraiya asked. What about him? Are you going to tell him about this? Jiraiya prodded, wondering if she will let Naruto know that the threat to his person has the probability of increasing if the rumor was true. No, Tsunade answered truthfully. Naruto deserves a break from all the chaos that surrounds them. He had already seen far too much of the world. Experienced far too much cruelty. He needs to relax more and spend some time with his peers. To let himself enjoy for once. To be normal. I see, Jiraiya replied. He knew why Tsunade would like Naruto to stay in the village. She may not see it, but she was subconsciously being selfish. She had not seen Naruto for such a long time. He had seen the sparkle in her eyes while she argued with the boy. She had missed him and was afraid of losing him again so soon, not when they had just recently returned. Go now, Tsunade ordered. Very well. With a smirk, Jiraiya disappeared with a puff of smoke, making the necessary preparations and plans for another dangerous mission. Meanwhile, Naruto waited anxiously for any sign of his sensei. He was still hoping against hope, that while Jiraiya was in there with Tsunade, he will be able to change her mind about his living quarters. He was surprised out of his thoughts when he sensed another presence made itself appear before him. His body tensed, as many years of training made him ready for any incoming threats. All that rushed in his mind was the instinct to fight. The only thoughts entering his mind that was controlling his body was two simple words, friend or foe. The puff of smoke appeared a couple of meters away from him. When the smoke dissipated, it left an image of a woman. A woman he barely recognized. His body still tensed, ready for any sudden moves. Shizune appeared, teleported just outside of Tsunade's office. She sensed another's presence nearby. As the smoke faded gradually, she could make out a head full of spiky, untamable blonde hair. Followed closely by the bluest intense eyes and the weird whisker marks upon its cheeks. Upon seeing these features, Shizune yelped in joy and tackled the young man before him. Naruto! Shizune cried out in glee as she glomped the confused youth. Gah! Can't breathe, Naruto uttered as he began to turn slightly blue. Too stunned and unprepared for the woman despite his earlier stance. Oh, sorry about that, Naruto-kun. It's been so long. Shizune released Naruto from her arms, slightly blushing as she noticed how much Naruto has changed. He had grown taller and more muscular. He had lost most of his baby fat, and judging from her hug earlier, she can say that was now replaced with raw muscles. His hair has grown longer too. Similar to Jiraiya, except it's not too long and is tied in a low ponytail. He no longer wore his orange jacket but was wearing a black singlet with an orange swirl in the middle. He also wore silver bracers on his wrists. Shizune smirked when he noticed his pants. He still wore orange pants but wore black combat boots with it. Naruto studied the woman in front of him. He suddenly recognized the woman. It's Shizune. He wanted to hit himself for not recognizing her sooner. She still looked the same and still wore the same style kimono, but to him she was as lovely as the day he had first met her. How are you doing, Shizune Nichan? He asked her. It has been 3 years after all. Though he did send a couple of letters, they were mostly mission reports. I'm fine, Naruto-kun. I'm so glad you're back. Shizune replied back before Hagane Katetsu interrupted them. Naruto, Godime-sama asks that you go to this address. Katetsu instructed. This will be the address where you will be staying at. Naruto pouted. You mean she's serious? She didn't change her mind? He asked the bandaged Chunin. I guess not. Katetsu answered sympathetically, but deep down inside he was slightly jealous of the blonde's luck. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Trouble already? Shizune asked curiously. You can say that. It's great to see you, Shizune Nichan, but I guess I better head off to face my maker, Naruto said solemnly as he picked up his huge pack. I'll see you later, Nichan. Maybe we can catch up later once I'm more settled in, Naruto said as he smiled at her. Sure, Naruto. I would love that, Shizune answered as the two parted ways. Katetsu then accompanied the blonde shinobi towards the exit. Shizune then entered Tsunade's office eager to find out who Tsunade appointed to be the next manager of the Kunoichi Inn. Naruto meanwhile walked along the streets of Konoha, remembering the many sights and places as he navigated his way towards the inn that he's meant to stay at. Hopefully Tsunade had already called the Kunoichis and had already explained his case to them. Besides, it was her fault after all, therefore it was her responsibility to let them know that he's coming. In the back of his mind, he wondered what had happened to his perverted mentor. He assumed that his perverted mentor probably made another inappropriate comment and was probably knocked out by one of Tsunade's punches. Naruto chuckled as he pictured Jiraiya's chaotic form. He came to a stop as he saw the street that the map indicated. He looked at the street name and number and stood outside on the road. In front of him was a flight of stone concrete stairs that seemed to go on and on. On top of the stairs stood a massive establishment. He took a deep breath. This is it, he thought to himself. He then began to make his way up the stairs and towards the inn. You what? Shizune could not believe what she had just heard. You heard me, Shizune. Tsunade replied calmly to her assistant. But that's crazy, Shizune exclaimed. Crazy? Tsunade questioned. A telltale twitch appeared on her eye, warning Shizune to watch her next words carefully. Shizune got a hold of herself and tried to control her outburst, seeing as Tsunade was not in the most pleasant of moods. With all due respect, Tsunade-sama, why on earth would you appoint Naruto as the manager of the Kunoichi Inn? Shizune asked, curious as to why Tsunade would do such a thing. Tsunade took a deep breath and sighed. Shizune, Naruto has nowhere else to live. We all know that the villagers still hold some sort of animosity towards him because of the Kyuubi. I doubt he will have any luck finding a place to live in right now. But Tsunade-sama, besides you will be there to look after him. I know Naruto. Despite the many years he had spent with Jiraiya, I doubt he managed to corrupt him. Also, if he does try anything, the Kunoichis will set him straight. Tsunade explained. But, no more buts, Shizune. Tsunade exclaimed. I have made my choice. If all else fails, you can always tell the other girls that I placed him there so he can do repairs for the inn as well as handle your pervert problem. Tsunade explained more calmly. It's not that I doubt your judgment, Tsunade-sama. It's just that I don't think the other girls will be as accepting and understanding as I am about this. Shizune replied back solemnly. I know, Shizune. I know. We just better hope he doesn't do anything stupid beforehand. Tsunade replied as she began massaging her forehead to try and stop her incoming headache. It's not that I doubt your judgment, Tsunade-sama. It's just that I don't think the other girls will be as accepting and understanding as I am about this. Shizune replied back solemnly. I know, Shizune. I know. We just better hope he doesn't do anything stupid beforehand. Tsunade replied as she began massaging her forehead to try and stop her incoming headache. Naruto knocked at the door several times and waited for someone to answer. Unbeknownst to him that the residents are all too absorbed with themselves that no one heard him. Mostly all of the residents were in the second or third floor of the inn. Sakura was studying her medical books, Tamari was busy cleaning her fan in her room, Ino was outside at the backyard attending the garden with Tenten, and Anko was in her room listening to her iPod and was dancing around to some dance music. Hinata and Kurenai went out to buy some groceries. Naruto had been standing outside for 10 minutes now. He decided to knock again. This time a little harder. He had only tapped once when the door opened slightly. Naruto took this as an indication to let himself in. He carefully entered the inn. He looked around to see if anyone was in. "Hello, anyone here?" He called out carefully. Again, no response. "Great. This is just great. No one is even here," he said to himself. He decided to search the inn for anyone he can talk to about his predicament. While he wandered around the ground floor, he noticed that everything was clean and orderly. He also noticed a couple of repairs that the inn needed to be done, such as the roof tiles while he was outside waiting for someone to open the door for him before. He also found that the inn had its very own outdoor hot spring. Feeling tired from his journey back to Konoha, he found the hot spring inviting. And since no one was around, he thought there wasn't really any harm in having a quick dip to soothe his tired and aching muscles. With all that in mind, he made his decision and began to undress. Sakura stretched from her seat. Her mind swam with various information that she recently acquired from the book she was reading. Feeling that a break was in order, she decided to make her way towards the hot spring. "There's nothing like a hot spring to ease my tired body," Sakura told herself, as she gathered her bathing needs. Naruto enjoyed the sensation of warm water as it soothed his aching body. He never seemed to enjoy his stay at the hot spring houses that he went to with Jiraiya because of his stupid data gathering for his perverted book. It always got them chased by hordes of angry women. This was really the only time he can actually remember enjoying the spring for once. The whole area was surrounded by steam, and the sound of water running was making his body relax and making him feel drowsy. That is until he heard the door to the spring slide open. He instantly froze when he realized he was no longer alone. Sakura entered the hot spring, clad with only a towel covering her body. She closed her eyes as she sat down in the springs and relaxed as she let the water do its work. It was then that she sensed someone else was in the spring with her. Did she open her eyes and tried to make out who it was in the springs with her through the cloud of steam? She spotted blonde, unruly hair and assumed that it was probably the San Kunoichi. She scooted closer to her when she noticed the figure moved away. The figure was now slightly a few meters in front of her in the other side of the spring. "I'm sorry, Tamari-san. I didn't mean to intrude, but I only came here to relax." Sakura apologized through the thick steam screen between them. She didn't really mean to disturb the San Kunoichi. Tamari mostly kept to herself and really disliked being disturbed. Despite living in the same inn, Sakura hadn't really made any attempts to befriend the other Kunoichi. The figure didn't reply back. "Oh, come on now, Tamari. No need to be shy. We're both girls here. Why don't you come over here and talk to me?" Sakura asked. Again there was no reply. "Fine, Tamari. Be a bitch. See if I care." Sakura replied back, annoyed at the San Kunoichi. "Who's being a bitch?" Tamari asked from the door, about to join her in the spring. She too was only wearing a towel. "Tamari?" Sakura asked as she looked at the door and the figure sitting across her. "Yeah, who else is it meant to be?" Tamari replied back as she approached Sakura. She also noticed another person at the spring, which made her narrow her eyes. Due to the steam it was hard to distinguish who the figure was, but judging from the shape alone told her that it was more likely an intruder rather than any of the residents of the inn. "If you're there, then who's there?" Sakura asked as she pointed to the unknown figure before her. "Let's find out, shall we?" Tamari replied back before she swiftly went back inside the house to grab her battle fan. "URK." Naruto gulped as he began to try and escape. He was busted. "Oh no you don't," Sakura replied back before tackling the unknown figure, making them crash into the warm water. Tamari then enters, this time with her battle fan in her hand. She didn't have any time to put any of her clothes on, so she was still wearing a white towel around her body. Kunoichi no Jutsu. Temari called out as she unleashed her wind attack, effectively blowing off the steam surrounding the springs to better identify the intruder who was in the springs with Sakura. She watched as she saw her fellow Kunoichi rise from the water, her towel loosening. In the water was a slightly dazed male with blonde hair. Sakura also seems to notice this. Without the steam, they can clearly identify that there was indeed a male inside the Kunoichi inn. In the spring, as a matter of fact. Pervert. The two Kunoichi both cried in unison. Naruto, sensing the kind of danger he was now in, decided it was better to explain himself. Now wait a second. Let me explain. Naruto pleaded. Unfortunately for Naruto, Sakura's drenched, loosened towel decided to give way, slipping off from the pink-haired Kunoichi's body, giving Naruto an eyeful of her chest. Pervert. Sakura cried out as she tried to cover herself with her left hand while she administered a powerful right hook towards Naruto's slack jaw, sending him hurtling a few feet away, finally coming into a stop when he collided directly at one of the rocks surrounding the spring. Sakura then took this time to grab her towel to secure it around her. Naruto shook his head trying to clear his vision and saw the two angry Kunoichi head towards him. Now was the time to really start running away. Ignoring the pain he felt, he pushed himself off the rock and ran, trying to explain himself failed and only rewarded him with a powerful punch from the pink-haired girl. The blonde girl didn't look like she would listen to him, judging from the way she held that massive fan of hers. He'd hate to see what the blonde could do to him. Get back here. Both Temari and Sakura called out as they both chased the blonde youth. Naruto continued to dodge Temari's wind attacks while also trying to avoid Sakura's furniture projectiles as he ran all over the house. He really didn't want to hurt the two girls. He decided to try and create cage bunchins, but his clones were eliminated by Temari's and Sakura's attack even before the clones were able to leave his side. He needed to think fast. By then this alerted the attention of a certain special Junin. Hearing the noises, she went outside of her room to investigate, only to catch a fleeting sight of a well-built blonde male who was only wearing a towel, followed closely by Sakura and Temari. Seeing all this made her lick her lips with excitement as she went inside her room and got her kunais. She decided to join the foray. After all, it's been a while since she had gone hunting and the blonde male seemed like the perfect prey. Naruto decided to jump up the roof to give him more room so he can create more of his bunchins. The three Kunoichis followed closely behind. Meanwhile, Kurenai and Hinata had just arrived at the inn. They were both surprised by the amount of damage they saw as they entered. They also heard all the commotion coming from the outside towards the backyard. Without any hesitation, the two females went out to investigate. They ran upstairs towards the veranda to better distinguish what was going on in the inn. The cage bunchins were working, but not as good as Naruto hoped. It did somewhat slow the Kunoichis down a bit, but they were still chasing him relentlessly. He particularly got nervous when one kunai flew past his cheek and grazed it. Anko smirked when one of her kunais finally managed to scratch the blonde. It only got her all excited at catching him. Temari kept using her wind attacks on him, destroying most of the bunchins he had created. It also sent Naruto flying. Naruto decided that running away towards the Hokage office would be a better idea. If they followed him there, he was sure that Tsunade will put a stop on their attacks. With that in mind, he began to run towards the veranda, not knowing that Hinata and Kurenai was just coming out to see what the commotion was about. Naruto landed in front of the two females. Hinata was startled while Kurenai was caught in surprise, too stunned to move or react. Before them was a half-blonde with blue eyes and strange whisker marks on his cheeks. Kurenai narrowed her eyes and got ready to attack, but Temari beat her to it. Seeing the blonde intruder had stopped running away, she again used her Kunoichi no Jutsu. It worked, for it sent Naruto hurtling towards the ground below, but he was not alone. Hinata also got caught in the attack and sent her down with him. Naruto saw Hinata fall and decided to protect her. So without thinking, he reached for her and hugged her. This action flustered Hinata. Naruto on the other hand shifted his body so that it was he who will bear the brunt of the impact. They landed painfully on the ground below. Actually, it was Naruto who landed painfully on his back while he cushioned Hinata's fall. Naruto's body flared with pain. Hinata, realizing this, quickly got off him. "Are you okay?" Naruto asked the frightened girl, ignoring his own pain for the moment. "He's worried about me. He saved me from a nasty fall and he doesn't even know who I am." Hinata thought to herself. She looked at her blonde savior and couldn't help but feel a sudden sense of déjà vu. Before Hinata could even ask the blonde if he was alright, he stumbled back on his feet and began to run away. The Kyuubi already began healing his injured body. But Naruto could still feel the pain reverberating in his body as he took flight. "Hinata, are you okay?" Ino shouted as she ran towards her. Beside her was Tenten, who witnessed what had just happened. Both girls were surprised when they saw Hinata and the intruder fall from the third floor of the inn. They had heard the commotion as well and decided to investigate. "Did that pervert try anything on you?" Tenten asked angrily, brandishing her own set of kunais from her weapon holster. "Quickly, girls. He's getting away," Kurenai told them as she, Tamari, Enko and Sakura landed beside them. "Hinata, you better stay back. Sakura, you stay back as well and tend to her injuries. We'll handle that little pervert," Kurenai said as she took charge of the group, before leading the rest of the household to catch the blonde intruder. "Kurenai-san, wait," Hinata cried out as she watched her mentor lead the other girls to chase her savior. "It's okay, Hinata. They'll catch that lech," Sakura comforted the other girl. "No, you don't understand. He saved me," Hinata replied back before getting up and following the other girls. "Hinata, wait," Sakura called out. "She hasn't even checked her out for any injuries from the fall. It's that stupid lech's fault," Sakura thought to herself as she also got up and ran after the rest of the Kunoichi residents. "I can't believe you're running away from a bunch of girls, Kit." Kyuubi taunted him in his mind. "Shut up, Kyuubi. I really don't need your 2 cents right now," Naruto growled to himself. "Want me to take care of them?" Kyuubi asked. Naruto saw the maniacal grin the fox demon had. "No, I can perfectly handle things on my own. Just lend me your strength for now," Naruto replied back. He can only guess it will involve something perverted. Jiraiya had really rubbed off on the fox demon. It was then that Naruto saw his savior. "Naruto. What the?" Shizune asked, bewildered as he saw the blonde shinobi wearing just a towel streaking towards her. "Nichan. Save me," Naruto called out to Shizune as he hid behind her. "There he is," called out Kurenai, the other girls still hot in pursuit. Shizune soon saw the angry residents of the Kunoichi Inn and nervously sweat dropped. Feeling very uncomfortable being caught in the middle of chaos. "Great, Shizune, you caught him. Now hand him over so we can deal with him," Enko replied back before licking her kunai while keeping her eyes glued on Naruto. "Nichan," Naruto pleaded from behind her. Shizune sighed. She felt sorry for the blonde shinobi. Not even a day back and he's already caught in the middle of trouble. She faced the other Kunoichi residents and shook her head. "I don't think so, Enko," Shizune replied back as she stood defiantly in front of them, trying to hide Naruto from their view. "Step out of the way, Shizune-san. He is a pervert. He took advantage of Hinata-san," Tenten explained as she glared at the blonde. The rest of the girls nodded. "He also saw me and Tamari at the hot springs," Sakura seconded. "Saw me and my. Inner Sakura protested. "Kill him. Skin him alive. Kill the pervert," Inner Sakura ranted. Shizune turned to face Naruto. "Is this true?" she asked him. "No. They walked in on me while I was in the spring," Naruto explained, looking Shizune straight in her eyes to tell her that he was not lying. His blue eyes almost mesmerizing her to believe him. "Liar!" shouted the rest of the girls as they began to advance towards Shizune, trying to get a hold of Naruto. "Shut up, all of you. Shizune replied back, effectively stopping their advance. Why don't we all step back inside and get these things sorted out alright? She pleaded to the girls. All the girls reluctantly agreed but glared at the blonde male. All except for Hinata, who was torn between being thankful for being saved by him and supporting her roommates. Inside, Naruto explained his side of the story of what happened when he arrived at the Kunoichi Inn. The girls felt sheepish at the way they reacted towards him and reluctantly apologized. Still, one question still bothered them. If it was all an accident, then why are you here? Didn't you know this was a Kunoichi Inn? Ino asked Naruto. I knew this is a Kunoichi Inn, but Naruto replied back, but before he could explain, Sakura interrupted him. So you are a pervert? Sakura accused, which once again fueled anger of the rest of the residents towards him. All except for Hinata and Shizune. What Naruto is meant to say is that he is staying here. Shizune explained to them, glaring slightly at Sakura for jumping to conclusions again, setting off the ire of the other residents when the situation was already diffused. What? The residents all shouted in shock. But he's a guy, Tenten shouted. This is a Kunoichi Inn. Ino stated. He's a pervert. Sakura protested. Think about the girl's purity. Kurenai exclaimed. The girls said all at the same time. What a hunk. Enko gushed. All the other girls looked at her weirdly. What? He is. Enko replied back to them as she winked at Naruto. Naruto, on the other hand, began to cringe. He just recognized who the crazed Junin was. She was the demented examiner for the Chunin exams. The one that cut him with her kunai and licked his blood. He didn't like the gleam that he saw in her eyes or the way she eyed him like a piece of meat. Seeing his reaction, however, only made Enko's grin grow wider. Shizune sighed again. This is Uzumaki Naruto. He is also the new manager of the inn that Tsunade has chosen. She explained as the other girls all stared at her and Naruto in shock. Naruto, on the other hand, just scratched the back of his head. Hi girls. Sorry about this. Naruto apologized as he grinned sheepishly as he stood up from his seat. Shizune sighed again. This is Uzumaki Naruto. He is also the new manager of the inn that Tsunade has chosen. She explained as the other girls all stared at her and Naruto in shock. Naruto, on the other hand, just scratched the back of his head. Hi girls. Sorry about this. Naruto apologized as he grinned sheepishly. All the girls stared in shock. All of them speechless. Well, I'm not going to stand for this. Kurenai protested as she stood up. There are girls in this inn that will be in danger of him. Think of their virtues. Kurenai said in a panic. The inn does not need a hormone-crazed guy running the place. Who knows what type of sick, twisted and perverted things the blonde was planning for them. Especially the younger girls. His reputation remains questionable. I mean, who the hell is he? We don't know anything about this guy and Tsunade appoints him as the manager. Kurenai rambled on. While Kurenai rambled on and on about the inappropriateness of Naruto's presence in the inn, and her concern towards their welfare, the rest of the household began to remember one Uzumaki Naruto. He's a member of Team 7. Sakura thought to herself as she looked at the blonde-haired boy more curiously. Finally recognizing him, shocked that after 3 years she barely remembered the blonde teammate that constantly bugged her about going out with him. He had changed a lot, it seems. He was no longer the midget blonde that bugged her. Rather, he was now taller. Taller than the women present. He was probably as tall as Hatake Kakashi. He was built too. Judging at his bare chest, muscular arms and thick legs. Inner Sakura drooled as she observed him secretly. Fighting the urge to blush and drool at the same time. Trying to drown out inner Sakura's protest of trying to peek and examine what lies behind that small towel wrapped tightly around his waist. He was the one that defeated Kiba and encouraged me during my fight with Neji. Hinata gasped. No one had ever supported her before. She also remembered how much she felt for him. She had admired him for standing up for her. Her admiration slowly turned into something more when she found out from Kiba that he fought Neji in her honor during the Chunin preliminaries where she lost consciousness. It was just like a fairy tale story. That is until her eyes began to wander to his almost state. She had to fight the urge to use her Byakugan to examine him more thoroughly. Bad Hinata. Naughty Hinata. Hinata mentally berated herself, trying to maintain her eye level to remain on his handsome but clueless face. He is the one that defeated Neji's family technique. Tenten gasped as well in recognition. He was the one who completely changed Neji's attitude completely around. He used to treat Hinata no better than dirt, but after his encounter with the blonde, he became less cold-hearted. He actually managed to tolerate the Hyuga clan and became an older brother figure for Hinata and Hanabi. Naruto managed that with just one single encounter. Though another thought entered her mind. I wonder if he realizes that he's standing in front of us with just a towel on. Tenten asked herself as she tried not to giggle at his clueless expression as to why Kurenai was so adamant of his presence. And boy, what a presence it was. He made it to the preliminaries and defeated Hyuga Neji, one of Konoha's genius shinobi. Ino remembered. She also couldn't help but smile at his antics when he won. He didn't brag about his win or sneered at Neji. Instead, he traipsed around like a kid, lapping up all the attention that was given to him. He also managed to befriend Shikamaru and Choji in the process. She tried to avert her eyes in examining him more, since it will only make her notice more of his tanned and well-toned body. She focused her sight to his blue eyes instead, marveling at how mesmerizing those eyes could be. Tamari shivered in fear. He was the one who defeated Gaara at his ultimate demon form. Tamari had nightmares about that fateful day. The first time Gaara transformed made her fear for her life. That in any given moment, Gaara will be completely consumed by bloodlust and actually kill her and Kankuro in rage. So it was only natural that when Gaara transformed during his encounter with Naruto that such fear enveloped her whole being. But what was more terrifying was the fact that someone as dangerous and fearsome as Gaara in his ultimate form, another being had managed to defeat him. That being was now in front of her. What terrifying power could be lurking underneath such a facade of an innocent smile? Tamari involuntarily shivered, not wanting to find out if Naruto could be more frightening than Gaara as she recalled their fight at the forest. He's the annoying brat that I cut during the Chunin exams. Anko stated. Such sweet blood too. She grinned wickedly. He was loud and brash. But there was something about the blonde that piqued her interest, and it wasn't because he was a demon container. There was something more intangible that attracts her. It must be the raw power he unconsciously emits, or it must be his innocence that draws her like a moth to a flame. In any case, Anko was definitely interested. Shizune watched each of the residents' reactions upon finding out about Naruto's identity. She can tell from their reactions that from one stage or another, they have encountered the loudmouth shinobi. Well, it was hard not to. Still, Shizune didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. You only get two reactions when you meet Naruto. It's either you like him or you don't. Naruto is part of Team 7 under the leadership of Hitaki Kakashi. From the age 6, he was adopted by one of the Sanins known as Jiraiya and was trained by him from time to time, that's why he was barely around. Shizune explained, watching the residents' reaction. More precisely, Kurenai and Anko's reactions about this little information. Upon hearing this, the younger girls gasped in awe, while Kurenai and Anko knew more to Jiraiya than everyone else, had a different kind of reaction. Having endured the pervert's many attempts at peeping at them at the bath, it's suffice to say that both women were left unimpressed. Well, slightly unimpressed. In Anko's case, it only made her interest in the blonde-haired boy grow. The rest of the girls who didn't know Jiraiya's perverted reputation was odd that Naruto was being trained by one of the legendary Sanins. I know many of you hold reservations against him, but please give him a chance. He is a great guy once you get to know him. Shizune pleaded to the girls. More to Kurenai than anyone else, since she looked like she was the one who is still against the idea of letting Naruto stay. Naruto blushed at Shizune's praise of him. He had never had anyone support and stand up for him before. He looked at her in awe. He made a mental promise to himself that he will make it in his own power to never disappoint her. The rest of the residents contemplated on Shizun's words. Surely if Shizun trusted the blonde-haired boy, they can find it in themselves to trust him too. Besides, he looks like a decent guy. Very well. He can stay. But you better keep your hands to yourself or else. Kurenai warned Naruto. She was still not convinced of the guy's identity to trust him entirely. Besides, he was just standing there, barely clothed in front of them with not a sense of modesty whatsoever. No decency at all to at least put a shirt on and not let the rest of the residents bask on his well-toned, tanned and delicious body. Kurenai bit her tongue, trying to dissuade herself of her last wandering thoughts. The rest of the girls just followed suit. They simply nodded their heads indicating they feel the same way as Kurenai. Great. Shizun clapped her hands in appreciation. She had at least convinced the residents to let Naruto stay. Now for the hard part. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Shizun asked the people. Naruto took the initiative. Well, since I'm the odd one out, I guess I better introduce myself. He said a bit sheepishly. I am Uzumaki Naruto, age 18. I like ramen and training. My greatest dream is to become Hokage so I can protect my most precious people. He introduced himself and looked at Shizun, clearly indicating that she was one of his most precious people, which made Shizun blush. My turn. Anko replied back excitedly. Watching Naruto's interaction with the medic Nin, she assumed that he was most definitely attracted to more mature women. That and she was eager to get his attention. Mitarashi Anko is my name, and killing is my game. She introduced herself while winking at Naruto. Naruto shivered in response to the attention the psychotic Junin was giving him. I am also a Tokubetsu Junin. She added as she saw him look at her in interest. So she's a highly specialized Junin. I wonder what type of training she specializes in. Maybe she can help me train. Naruto thought. But when he took another glance at Anko, he began to have second thoughts. Especially when he saw that wicked gleam in her eyes. Kurenai only sighed watching her best friend's antics. She decided to introduce herself. My name is Yuhi Kurenai. I am a Junin, she answered. She had no plans on revealing her specialty in genjutsu techniques to the blonde until she deemed him trustworthy enough. I am also Team 8's sensei. My name is Hyuga Hinata. I am part of Team 8. I am a Chunin. Hinata introduced herself shyly. She fought her blush from showing as she felt the blonde's blue eyes on her. The name's Tenten and I am a weapons specialist. I am a member of Team Guy and is also a Chunin. Tenten responded, picking up where Hinata has trailed off. Yamanaka Ino is my name. I am also a Chunin and enjoys flowers and gardening. Ino replied, not wanting to reveal her bloodline limit. She plans on using them later on to find out more information about him. I'm Haruno Sakura in case you have forgotten. We were in the same team before. Sakura stated as he looked at Naruto to see if he remembered her. Naruto gave her a thumbs up, which clearly means he has, so she continued. I am also a Chunin and Tsunade-sama's protege. Which makes me a medic nin. I work alongside Shizun-sama. It's great to see you again, Naruto. Sakura finished as she smiled at him. The name's Subaku Tamari. I am a Junin and, Tamari began but was suddenly cut off by Naruto. Subaku. Are you related to Gaara by any chance? Naruto asked curiously. Yeah, I am his sister. We've met before during the Chunin exams. Tamari replied back, slightly nervous. He might still have a grudge against San for the whole invasion thing. Naruto seemed to think about it for a while, trying to remember his encounter with Tamari. Before slamming his fist into his open palm. That's right. You were that hot Kunoichi sheik from Sand. Naruto blurted out, which made Tamari blush. Thanks, I think. Tamari replied back. She could feel the rest of the household's eyes on her. Hey, how come you're at Konoha? Aren't you meant to be at Sand? You weren't at Sand last year when I caught up with Gaara. Naruto asked her, not noticing how uncomfortable Tamari was being the center of attention. I am Sand and Leaf's ambassador. As such, I can stay here to monitor Sand and Leaf's relations and maintain peace between the villages. Tamari answered for him. She tried not to feel self-conscious since it wasn't in her nature to be one. But there was something in the way he looked at her with those blue innocent eyes of his that made her feel funny. Gaara did say he has a sister. Never knew you were this hot though. Naruto blurted out again. This comment only made Tamari blush more and glare at him for making her do so. Kurenai was also glaring at Naruto for openly flirting with the Sand Junin in front of everyone. Hinata felt a tad jealous that Naruto seemed to be more interested with Tamari. It was the same deal with Tenten and Ino but for completely different reasons. Tenten was glaring at Naruto for not picking up on Hinata's feelings and had been blatantly flirting with Shizune and Tamari. Ino on the other hand was a bit ticked off that Tamari was getting the blonde's attention. Ino was still sore about Tamari dating Shikamaru, who was also her crush at the time. Though they didn't last long, and she had gotten over Shikamaru, she felt a bit intimidated by the other blonde. She viewed Tamari as one of her rivals. She was determined to best her in every possible way she can. After all, didn't they say a healthy competition is good for the soul or something like that? Making you strive and work harder just to see that person beaten by yourself. Not literally, of course. 'Cause she has a feeling that Tamari can easily do that without even trying. Sakura was never her competition. Sakura was her best friend. As such, she wanted her shy friend to be more confident about her talents. So she decided to push her. Made Sakura believe she was her rival so that in doing so she'd come out of her shell. And it worked to a certain extent. It brought her out of her shell and became more outspoken and confident about herself, but not without a downside. It cost her friendship. And while she is still friends with the pink-haired Kunoichi, she still wished for the closeness they had when they were kids. Their friendship was now built on insults and comfort concealed in heavy sarcasm. Trust was still an issue that was on shaky ground. Not much of a friendship if you really look at it, but that's the next step or close enough to be one. Naruto looked around the room and noticed a lot of tension in the air. He assumed that he did something foolish again and hoped that the girls didn't change their minds about letting him stay. Let me show you where your room is, Naruto, and after that I'll give you a tour of the place. Shizune offered, not wanting to tempt fate again and leave the other residents to simmer for a little while. Not really sure why there was a lot of tension in the air again, but she'd rather Naruto not be in the middle of it all. I've already had a brief tour of the place. Naruto replied back as a joke to lighten the mood because it was true. Being chased by a pack of angry females gave him an unofficial tour of the whole inn, trying to get away from them. Unfortunately, it didn't go over too well to the other residents. The joke only served as a reminder of what had happened earlier. But then again, getting a better look at the place with a leisurely pace sounds much better. Naruto replied again, watching the other girls glare at him, while he laughed uneasily while he scratched the back of his head. Naruto took a good look around his room. It was Spartan at the most. It had a bed, a table and few chairs and a wardrobe for his clothes. Shizune said that the room was only simple, but he was free to decorate and add more furniture to the room. Which was fine by him. With his many missions, he had a lot of money to spend. Money that he managed to hide from his perverted sensei. Upon thinking about his mentor, he remembered a package Shizune gave him. It was supposed to be from his mentor. Since he wasn't really doing anything and he had already unpacked, he decided to read the letter attached to the package. Naruto. Sorry brat, but I was sent to another mission by Tsunade. No, you can't come. And, no, you're not going to follow me. Don't try and track me down. You have a responsibility to take care of. Think of it as handling a mini version of Konoha. This will be a great practice into becoming a Hokage. Trying to manage the residents of the inn, their needs and handling paperwork. Oh, and do follow the advice that I've been giving you all these years. This will also give you an opportunity to try and test your manly skills. Don't fret if you've forgotten. I've given you all that you need to know about women in the package. Signed exclusively by myself, so don't lose it. Make me proud, brat. Jiraiya. Naruto merely groaned in response, until he noticed that there was something more. P.S. Whenever you can, take a photo of the girls for me to keep me warm in the cold lonely nights. It would also help if you send me their vital statistics. Upon reading the last note, Naruto angrily rolled the letter into a tight little ball and threw it at the wastebasket. Seething at his mentor's request. He was trying to stay alive as much as possible, not risk an early grave. Does he not understand what kind of danger his life is in just by merely breathing in the same place as the residents of the Kunoichi Inn? Naruto looked at the package like it was supposed to come to life and bite him in the. Naruto sighed and decided to get this over and done with. He opened the package and stared at the contents. He wasn't sure whether to scream from frustration or in indignant anger or perhaps laugh hysterically. He had to hand it to his mentor though. He still manages to make his life miserable whether he was near or not. He stared at the package in his hands. It was Jiraiya's Ica Paradise. The full limited collection. It was also the one with the hardback cover as well as pictures and illustrations. They were the rare limited collection edition. If Hatake Kakashi found out he had these, he would die in envy and would most likely sell him his Sharingan eye and his mother to have it. Naruto immediately made a face picturing what kind of mother the Junin had, whether she too wore a mask, and shook his head. Naruto even briefly considered the benefits of having his very own Sharingan. If he considered to offer the book collection to Kakashi for it. He shook his head. Having blue eyes that turns red out of his own will is cool enough. Besides, he doesn't want to steal other people's techniques. He'd rather create one on his own or learn them. But it still would have been cool though. He was interrupted from his thoughts by a gentle rapping upon his door. Naruto-kun, are you ready? I'll give you the tour of the inn now as well as a rundown of the inn's rules and regulations. Shizune said outside his door. Naruto absent-mindedly placed the collection series on top of his dresser and joined Shizune for the tour. Later that night, Naruto decided that he wanted to have another go at the hot spring. Everyone else seemed to have gone to bed anyways. He had decided to remain silent and move out of the residence way for the rest of the day, since every time he was in the immediate vicinity he felt the tension in the air. He was stressed out and really need to relax. Tomorrow he will work on his people skills and try and get to know each of the girls better and try to get along with them, but for now he needed to relax. He made sure that he was silent as he made his way down towards the onsen, hot springs. Careful not to alert or disturb any of the resting girls. He finally made it to the steam-covered onsen and relaxed into the warm water. The sky was clear and the stars were out. He spent the time just losing himself to the sensations of the water, relaxing his tight muscles as he watched the stars above. This is the life, he said. No one but himself. I'll say, said a sultry purr. Naruto snapped awake. Who's there? All the while thinking that the inn better not be haunted. No need to be frightened, Naruto-chan. Just relax, said the sultry voice. Come out, whoever you are. Naruto called out, ready to engage the stranger in battle. If you insist, the voice replied. Naruto squinted his eyes and saw that the stranger was Mitarashi Anko. The steam was making it hard for him to see her form, but at least he could see her face. What are you doing here? Naruto asked, relaxing somewhat. Taking a much-needed bath. I don't like to share with the other girls. Anko replied back as she subtly moved closer. It was then that Naruto realized one important detail as the steam in the onsen thinned and the light provided by the heavens made him aware of a single and most important fact. Mitarashi Anko was standing in front of him with a naughty look in her eyes and smirk on her beautiful face. Gah! Naruto uttered in shock. What? You don't like what you see? Anko teased as she watched him avert his eyes, covering them with his hands. It looks like you do. Since your little shinobi seems happy to see me. Anko continued as she moved gracefully around the water as she approached him. He had definitely gone taller and more built as her eyes roamed his body. Licking her lips, liking what she was seeing. Now if she could only remove that pesky towel. Naruto removed his hands from his eyes and put them to cover the straining reaction in between his legs. Unaware that Anko was now circling him like a hungry shark. Don't worry Naruto, I won't bite hard, Anko whispered. She was close. Too close in fact because he could feel her breath in his ear. He could also feel her body heat against his skin. Naruto jumped in surprise and fell into the water. The commotion and the loud splash didn't go unheard though. Because in mere seconds, he could hear the other residents running towards the onsen. To make matters worse, Anko tried to help him out, trying to assist him to get up on his feet but tripped in the process. Landing on top of him. Well, this is interesting. Anko purred as she snuggled against him. Not planning to move anytime soon. Naruto had to fight back icky thoughts that entered his mind and Kyuubi screaming at him to take her. I'll say, came an angered response from a feminine voice. Naruto and Anko looked towards the entrance of the onsen and found shock, horrified and angry eyes all directed at them. I slipped. Naruto offered, but didn't look convincing since Anko was still lying on top of him. In her birthday suit. Pervert. The rest of the girls replied back while Anko stepped back and watched the carnage unfold. She really didn't want to be in the receiving end of the residents' wrath. And I was this close too, Anko sighed in disappointment as Naruto's scream of pain was heard. Shizune on the other hand rushed towards them in an attempt to stop them from committing murder. Glaring at Anko and subtly ordering her with her eyes to help her. Anko just gave a nonchalant shrug and tried to hold back a seething kunai from trying to dismember the blonde manager. Pervert. The rest of the girls replied back while Anko stepped back and watched the carnage unfold. She really didn't want to be in the receiving end of the residents' wrath. And I was this close too, Anko sighed in disappointment as Naruto's scream of pain was heard. Shizune on the other hand rushed towards them in an attempt to stop them from committing murder. Glaring at Anko and subtly ordering her with her eyes to help her. Anko just gave a nonchalant shrug and tried to hold back a seething kunai from trying to dismember the blonde manager. Waking up for Naruto wasn't much of a painful ordeal. It was remembering what happened before and the thought of future pain is what keeping him in bed. Get up, Kit. I refuse to lend you my powers only to be trampled by a pack of vixens. Kyuubi commanded him. It was rather a humiliating display. Kyuubi was a powerful demon, stuck in an 18-year-old boy who doesn't even know how to put women in their place. His power alone should have dictated respect and fear. Yet his vessel takes the abuse as if it was nothing. It was something Kyuubi had frequently berated him on. He was powerful. He demands respect. Now if you only let me handle things they'll all be at your feet, waiting for you hand and foot. Catering your every whim, Kyuubi added. Naruto just groaned and tried his hardest to drown out Kyuubi's voice. He already knew how Kyuubi would have handled the situation. Various eki and hentai images and scenes flashed through his mind, showing him exactly what would have happened if he let go and let his more base and animalistic instincts take over. Damn it! Naruto screamed in frustration. He thought he'd be able to have a break from all the pervertedness his mentor had tried teaching him and continually try and influence him with. He didn't realize that the demon he was carrying was that frustrated. I don't really need this right now, Kyuubi. So just shut the hell up. Naruto berated Kyuubi. Naruto understood that Kyuubi must be feeling rather pissed off at how he handled the situation. He was a demon king. Because of this, Kyuubi expected Naruto to act like one since it was he who housed the demon. Just like Shukaku's vessel, who struck fear upon mentioning his very name. Gaara of the desert. People quivered in fear just from hearing the vessel's name. Now Gaara would have been the perfect vessel. He didn't take any crap from anyone. Worthy to be a vessel for any demon. And this was just a one-tailed demon inferior, compared to the nine-tailed fox. It must have been such an ego blow to the demon. Don't compare me to that one-tailed weakling. Kyuubi snarled. The difference between our levels is far too great. I refuse for you to think that demon is any match for my powers. I only need to unleash half the power of one of my tails to defeat him. So don't you dare insult me. Naruto just chuckled at Kyuubi's reaction. But you do have a point, Kit. I only want you to have the respect you deserve, to be worthy of being my vessel. Kyuubi replied. This is probably the only thing Naruto and Kyuubi could agree on. Naruto couldn't handle the fact that no matter how much he tried, the village he tries so hard to protect continues to scorn him. He kept remembering times from his childhood. The many attempts on his life until the Sandaime gave Jiraiya custody of him. He still had nightmares of how much pain and trauma the people gave him. He was mentally and emotionally scarred. Being with Jiraiya helped him cope and heal with the pain, stopping him from going on a murderous rampage and giving in to his bloodlust. Kyuubi on the other hand admired Naruto's self-control. Despite his many encouragement of decimating the village, Naruto held back. Touching people and managing to reach out and change some of them. But it was only a matter of time until the whole village finds out about him. The true test would be as if his pack, or so-called friends would be able to accept Naruto once they find out about the truth. Both his thoughts and Kyuubi's was making Naruto depressed. Naruto didn't want to lose his precious people. He didn't have many. He already lost Sandaime, the one great man that he had looked up to and had made him feel special. But he was glad that at least he still had a family he can turn to. There was Yumi no Iruka, who acted like an older brother to him, Jiraiya who acted like his perverted uncle, and then there was Tsunade and Shizune. He smiled when he thought of all of them. He knew that his loud, brash and disrespectful attitude annoys them, but somehow it was his only way to really show and test how much they really cared about him. He didn't want the common affection that he sees from the families that walk down the streets of Konoha. Those types of affection can easily be copied and faked. But by pushing the buttons of the people he cares about and testing their limits, he was able to see how much they really care and try and understand him. He had a very difficult childhood and he just wanted to be sure that the feelings they were showing for him are for real and not just a mere illusion or fear of the demon he was carrying. Do you think Tsunade's are real or a special genjutsu? Kyuubi asked out of the blue, snapping Naruto from his thoughts. Ga. Naruto replied in shock, not even knowing what the hell prompted Kyuubi to ask such a question. Come on, Kit, don't tell me you never wondered if they are. I mean, I'm quite impressed that such a human can even perform such a powerful genjutsu. Naruto decided it was enough and totally blocked Kyuubi's voice, prompting him to finally get up from his warm bed and decided to see if he could make amends to the girls. Having decided to do just that, he got up and headed to the bathroom. Thanking Shizune mentally for giving him a room with its very own bathroom. He quickly got dressed and headed towards the kitchen where he found Hinata. Hinata had been awake bright and early. She enjoyed cooking and loved to cook for the other girls. She mused slightly about the accident that happened last night and shook her head. She couldn't believe how Anko could do such a thing with Naruto. Hinata blushed, remembering Naruto wearing that tiny towel, and shook her head. She didn't blame Naruto for what happened last night. She believed that what happened was not Naruto's fault. He didn't know about the older Junin's habit of going to the onsen. She remembered joining the foray and assisting Shizune and Anko in trying to stop the rest of the girls from beating him up. She blushed at remembering that at one point or another she was able to brush against Naruto while fending off the other girls. Good morning, Hinata-chan. Naruto greeted Hinata quite exuberantly, surprising the Hyuga girl. Naruto-kun. Hinata gasped from surprise. Hey, sorry about that, Hinata. Didn't mean to scare you like that. Naruto apologized sheepishly as he scratched the back of his head. That's ookn Naruto-kun. Why you just as surprised me that's all. Hinata replied back, fighting to keep herself from stuttering. She had gotten over that habit a long time ago with the help of the girls. She couldn't believe she was regressing back to her old self just by talking to him. What you doing? Naruto asked, curious as to why Hinata was awake. I'm just cooking and preparing breakfast. Hinata replied back. She thanked herself mentally for being able to reply back without stuttering. Need any help? Naruto replied back enthusiastically. He can start making amends with her while helping her. Not really. Hinata replied back shyly, uncertain of what to do next. Come on. I want to help you at least. Naruto pleaded using his puppy dog eyes. Sure. Hinata found herself responding almost automatically and hypnotically. Such beautiful blue eyes. Yosh. Naruto cried out happily as he raised a fist in the air. What do you want me to do? You could help me by chopping some of the vegetables on the table. Yosh. I can do that. I'll show you my marvelous chopping skills. Naruto replied back enthusiastically. Hinata blushed prettily. Soon both youths worked together quietly. Ohio Naruto-kun, Hinata. Shizune greeted as she entered the kitchen. A bit surprised that Naruto was at the kitchen helping Hinata cook. Good morning Shizune-san. Ohio Nichan. Shizune snickered. You two look so adorable together. She teased, watching Hinata blush while Naruto looked at her quizzically. Want me to set up the table? Shizune offered. Sure. Naruto replied before Hinata could respond. This will be the most kick breakfast you'll ever have Nichan. Naruto replied back as he helped Shizune gather the plates and eating utensils. Why's that? Shizune asked. She was glad that Naruto seemed to be in such a happy mood. She tried to look at him closely to see if it was just a mere facade. She had not seen Naruto for so long and she didn't want to see him upset. Because me and Hinata-chan made it. Naruto replied back with a grin. Hinata blushed at the compliment. So it's Hinata-chan now. Shizune teased. Huh. Naruto replied back confused. He was used to calling all the girls he met with, Chan. It was something he had picked up from his mentor, not knowing the intimate implications it contains. Never mind. Shizune replied back. Glad that Naruto was immune from Jiraiya's perverted habits. It actually worried her that he might have been able to be influenced by his mentor judging from the accident the night before. But she knew it was not his fault. All the girls knew of Anko's bathing ritual. She also knew of her more peculiar behaviors. She just hoped that they will not hold that little incident against him. Soon the rest of the girls joined them at the dining room. Breakfast was an unusually quiet event. Mostly because the girls contemplated about what had happened the night before. Naruto being Naruto was not used to such peace and thus decided to break it. Anyo-sa, what do you girls think of breakfast? He exclaimed with such energy. A couple of the girls winced at the blonde male's exuberance. Not really used to dealing with such energy bursts and vibrancy during the morning. It was fine. Why do you ask? Ino replied back. Because I helped prepare it. He said in the same loud happy voice. If the girls were shocked because of his little revelation, they didn't show it. Actually most of them were impressed. Especially Sakura, for she was sure that the only thing the blonde ate revolved around instant ramen or something similar to the sort. Most of the girls were even impressed that Naruto would even step into a kitchen, which was clear to the male shinobi population that it was a woman's domain. To learn that he would actually remotely enjoy cooking at leisure was information that was quite amusing. Not many male shinobi will even admit to the act of cooking since it was a feminine trait. But then again it must be some ploy of his to charm them. But it was Hinata-chan that did most of the work. Naruto continued as he gave Hinata the thumbs up. The girls only giggled at the blushing Hyuga. Naruto, who now felt that the atmosphere had gone considerably lighter, decided to apologize for the incident the night before. I would also like to take this opportunity to apologize about last night, Naruto said while scratching the back of his head. I really didn't know that Anko-san would be there that late at night. The girls seemed to absorb his apology, contemplating whether they should apologize as well for overreacting. Naruto had recently arrived and had no idea of their habits, especially Anko's. Naruto then looked towards Anko. Gomen Nasai. There's really no need to apologize, Naruto-chan. I really didn't mind you seeing me. In fact, if ever you want any company at the onsen to wash your back, just give me a call. Anko replied back, making the other girls gasp at her brazen offer. Naruto gulped loudly, not knowing how to respond to Anko's offer. Kyuubi on the other hand was screaming for him to take it. Kurenai only shook her head and felt guilty for trying to castrate the blonde male when she should be setting her friend Anko straight. It's fine Naruto, you shouldn't really apologize. It should be the girls that should be apologizing, especially Anko. Shizune replied back, stressing the last part out while glaring at Anko slightly. The girls all looked a bit sheepish at Shizune's statement. One by one, the girls apologized to Naruto, all except for Kurenai and Anko. I'm sorry Naruto. Next time I'll make sure that the other girls won't be interrupting us. Anko replied back seductively at the blonde. Not the slightest bit remorseful for what she did. Which earned her slap at the back of her head from her friend Kurenai. Thwack. Hentai. Kurenai admonished her friend. Anko merely glared at her friend while she massaged the back of her head. With the apologies over and done with, the rest of the household resumed their daily task. Shizune went to the Hokage Tower along with Tamari, Sakura went to the hospital, and Ino went to the flower shop, while the rest of the girls stayed at the inn. Naruto, having nothing better to do, decided to at least begin his duties as a manager and began to clean the floors, telling himself this would be a good training exercise for him. Half an hour later, Naruto wiped the sweat from his face. He had been on his knees and had been furiously scrubbing the floors clean. He had done the first floor so far. There was still a matter of the second and third floor, not to mention the attic. He also wanted to check out the basement if it needs to be cleaned. He was surprised, however, when a shadow loomed over him. Naruto-chan, can I have a moment of your time please? Anko asked him. Naruto was surprised that Anko was asking him for help. It was also rather unnerving since she actually looked decent and normal, with no mischief in her eyes. Sure Anko-san. What do you need? Naruto asked as he stood up and began to dust off his pants and his hands. Anko absently bit her lower lip as she looked coyly at him, fighting the urge to reply back with what she wanted to do with him, which involved a lot of the things mentioned in Jiraiya's books, but she restrained herself. She found out last night that the blonde was really shy and would probably be scared off by her being too forward. She would enjoy breaking his shy streak. She will take her time with him. It makes her fun more enjoyable that way. Naruto observed the psychotic Junin closely. It never hurt to be too careful. She was acting weird from what he had known from her the other night. He was sure that Anko would probably be his mentor's perfect girl. Wild, crazy and most importantly perverted. To see her acting innocent bothered him. He also noted that she was wearing a purple kimono that was wrapped tightly around her body. I need you to come take a look at the shower. Anko replied back. Naruto nodded, asking Anko where the girls kept some tools. After Anko had showed Naruto where to fetch the tools and after obtaining them, Naruto seemed to relax more. Naruto figured that the bathroom really needed to be fixed if Anko let him gather the tools. Okay, sure. Lead the way then. Naruto replied back as he followed Anko. Anko tried to hide the smile that wanted to escape her lips. Naruto had no idea what she planned for him. She began to lead the way, adding an extra sway in her hips. Naruto followed Anko to a room in the second floor. He was so intent on following Anko that he didn't notice that he had actually entered and walked past the bedroom. Anko on the other hand led him straight to the bathroom. Okay, what seems to be the problem? Naruto asked as he studied the bathroom and took out a wrench, eager to get started. There seems to be a problem with the pipes. I haven't had any hot water in days. Anko explained. I feel so very dirty. She added with a sultry purr. Naruto almost dropped the wrench he was holding at the sudden change of her voice. He almost got whiplash from turning his head to face Anko. His blue eyes went wide when he saw that the tight kimono she was wearing was now dangerously loose and was at risk of falling off. Anko grinned triumphantly as her eyes hungrily devoured his body. Naruto began to back out of the bathroom backwards. He stumbled and fell as he tripped on the way out. He looked at Anko in fear. Are you tired, Naruto? It's okay. You can take a look at the shower later. Why don't you lie down at the bed and make yourself comfortable? Anko replied back, making Naruto realize that they were now in the bedroom. More precisely, him lying on the floor while in front of him stood Anko. Her arms on either side of the entry frame of the bathroom with her purple kimono barely secured around her body. Naruto's mind went to overdrive as he realized he had just walked into one of her traps. He was alone in Anko's room, with Anko practically prowling to get him to bed and ravage him. She advanced, savoring his deer caught on headlights look, turning her on even more. I like this vixen kit. Show her what you're made of. Kyuubi cheered Anko on. It's about time you've gotten yourself laid. Shut the hell up, Kyuubi. I'm going to get raped here. Don't you even care? Naruto reprimanded Kyuubi. Just when Naruto thought that he was a goner, Anko's approach was interrupted by a knock from her door, followed by Kurenai entering the room. Hey Anko, it's me Kurenai. I'm about to go down to the store. Need anything? She asked as she entered. Naruto quickly jumped to his feet and fought the urge to hug and kiss his savior. He instead rushed towards Kurenai and hid behind her. Curses. Anko spat. She was so close. Anko felt like crying at the moment. Naruto, what are you doing here in Anko's room? Kurenai asked as she looked at Naruto and then at Anko's state of dress or state of undress. Just trying to fix her pipes. Naruto quickly explained before snatching Kurenai's hand, eager to get away from the psychotic Junin as fast as possible. I'll come with you to the market district to buy some replacement pipes for it. See you later, Anko-san. Naruto replied back quickly before dragging Kurenai out of the room, not caring if Anko even understood what he just said because of how fast he said it. Anko watched as the two departed. She was slightly disappointed that her fun was cut short again. Her frown was soon replaced by a smile, remembering that he will need to come back to her room in order to fix her so-called broken pipes. Just when Naruto thought that he was a goner, Anko's approach was interrupted by a knock from her door, followed by Kurenai entering the room. Hey Anko, it's me Kurenai. I'm about to go down to the store. Need anything? She asked as she entered. Naruto quickly jumped to his feet and fought the urge to hug and kiss his savior. He instead rushed towards Kurenai and hid behind her. Curses. Anko spat. She was so close. Anko felt like crying at the moment. Naruto, what are you doing here in Anko's room? Kurenai asked as she looked at Naruto and then at Anko's state of dress or state of undress. Just trying to fix her pipes. Naruto quickly explained before snatching Kurenai's hand, eager to get away from the psychotic Junin as fast as possible. I'll come with you to the market district to buy some replacement pipes for it. See you later, Anko-san. Naruto replied back quickly before dragging Kurenai out of the room, not caring if Anko even understood what he just said because of how fast he said it. Anko watched as the two departed. She was slightly disappointed that her fun was cut short again. Her frown was soon replaced by a smile, remembering that he will need to come back to her room in order to fix her so-called broken pipes. Naruto and Kurenai soon found themselves at the bottom of the steps of the Kunoichi Inn. Naruto out of breath, while Kurenai glared at him, annoyed at being dragged all the way outside without any preamble. Care to explain to me why you're at Anko's room? Kurenai questioned Naruto, her hands across her chest, ready to give him another lecture about the inappropriateness of his presence in any of the girls' rooms. Naruto looked up from his bent position, trying to catch his breath. He was rather annoyed that he was always at fault. It wasn't his fault. Anko trapped him. He cringed at the thought of what might have been if Kurenai didn't barge in. Like I said, I came in there to fix her bathroom pipes. Apparently there's some problem with her hot water system. So I took a look. Naruto explained, trying to rein in his annoyance. He looked her in the eyes, daring her to say otherwise. Kurenai wanted to call him out, that his answer was a lie. It wasn't a very convincing story. First of all, she found them in the bedroom, with Anko's robe barely hanging off of her. That was all she needed to scold him. But looking at the challenge written in his sapphire eyes, she was forced to review the scene she had interrupted. Naruto was on the floor. He looked like a deer caught on headlights as he looked at Anko in fear. Anko had that mischievous gleam in her eyes. Kurenai was forced to have an internal debate. So far she had misjudged him twice. She has yet to apologize about the incident in the onsen. Knowing Anko as long as she had meant that she knew Anko's personality and behavior quite well. It hadn't escaped her attention that Anko seemed to be really keen on the blonde. Deciding to figure out everything later, she decided to let go of the issue for now. She can talk to Anko later and get her to explain to her what happened. Kurenai sighed. Well, since we're out here, we might as well go to the market. Naruto seemed to accept her dismissal of the subject. To be honest, he really didn't want to think of what happened and what exactly the psychotic Junin had planned for him. He cringed thinking what could have inspired such interest to himself. He really didn't want to deal with her anytime soon. Anyo-sa, I thought you and Hinata-chan had already gone to the market yesterday. Naruto asked, curious as to why she needed to go to the market so soon. He distinctly remembering the girls explaining to Shizune what they were up to upon his arrival to the inn. Kurenai simply rubbed her forehead. Well, because of your surprise appearance, most of the groceries got trampled on because of all the excitement going on. She explained. She really didn't want to remember what kind of mess that fell on the inn. She was however surprised that Naruto volunteered to clean everything up, using his bunchins to help clean up the mess before the night was through. Thinking of all the work and chakra Naruto must have used to make up for the mess, made her feel guilty about almost castrating him in the onsen. The poor blonde probably wanted to relax his tired and aching muscles. The thought of his muscles made her think of his well-built and toned body. What was probably the most captivating thing about his beautiful body was not how built it was or how tanned and healthy he looks, but at how smooth his skin looked. There was no sign of scars or blemish upon his golden skin. A feat too impossible to be achieved by any male shinobi. Upon reflecting on the youth's body, she found herself blush at embarrassment. Thinking such unclean thoughts, she made a mental note to try and limit her contact with a certain Junin. Somewhere in the Anko's bedroom, Anko sneezed. She rubbed her nose vigorously. Perhaps waiting for Naruto in her bed in a provocative pose, with her clothes hanging off, isn't such a good idea. She's either getting a cold from the draft or someone was thinking of her. She grinned. She wished it was Naruto who was thinking of her. Gomen Nasai. Naruto apologized. Feeling guilty. He can only guess how much food must have been wasted. If he was Akamichi Choji, he would have cried at the injustice of it all and sought vengeance on the perpetrators. Then he got a brilliant idea. Slapping his fist against his open palm. Surprising Kurenai. Wait right here. Naruto practically shouted at her as he rushed back up the endless stone steps and back in the inn. Huh, was all Kurenai could say. Amazed at how fast Naruto disappeared. Upon reaching the inn's foyer, Naruto then used his body flicker technique to get to his room undetected. He really didn't want to be ambushed by Anko again. Reaching his room, he began to look through his pack, the dresser and finally the closet. Scratching his head in annoyance. He still couldn't find it. Where is it? He asked no one but himself. Trying to lower his voice down as to not alert or disturb anyone else in the inn. Most especially Anko. Then an epiphany struck him. Slapping his face for being such a dolt. He lifted up the mattress and found what he was looking for. There you are, Gama-chan. Naruto purred at his green frog wallet. Hugging the frog purse in his face. Ero Sennin will not bother you anymore, I promise. Naruto cooed at the wallet. You've gotten quite big, you know, but right now I need you to lose a bit of weight, okay? Not bothering to change clothes since he didn't want to make Kurenai wait any longer than necessary, he simply put Gama-chan in the pocket of his cargo pants. Using his body flicker technique, he once again disappeared and reappeared right before the very surprised Yuhi Kurenai. To say that Kurenai was surprised was a bit of an understatement. She nearly screamed from being caught off guard. She was so intent on Naruto barging down through the stairs that she was unprepared for him appearing right in front of her. She was so surprised in fact that she took a step back and lost her footing. Naruto saw her fall. Acting on instincts, he wrapped one arm behind her back and the other on her waist to support her. They stood there frozen, too shocked to move. A few passers-by looked at the two and shook their heads and continued walking. To them, the two looked like they were rehearsing some form of dance and the blonde had just tipped the woman as a finale. Although why they should be stuck in that form was a mystery. In any case, from their attire and forehead protector, they had already guessed they were shinobi and whatever they were doing was none of their business. Realizing the intimate manner he was holding Kurenai, he began to set her on her feet. She didn't look well enough to stand, so he continued to hold her against him. Kurenai on the other hand was flustered. Never before had she been held so intimately and with so much care and concern. She became aware that she now stood on her 2 feet. A bit shaky at first, but noticed that he didn't remove his hand around her body. A part of her raged at being taken advantage of, but another part of her was thankful that he didn't let her fall. She was aware of his warmth radiating from his body. The subtle scent of his masculine body combined with his musky cologne was causing chaotic responses deep within herself. She was intimately too close. She was fighting the temptation of just letting her body to simply melt against him. Kurenai-sensei? Naruto asked through her fogged mind, jolting her out of her dazed state. Kurenai looked up and nearly cursed. She forgot just how tall the youth has gotten. She looked up in his gorgeous sapphire eyes and all of her senses seemed to have left her. Kurenai-sensei, are you alright? Naruto asked in genuine concern. She seemed to just leaned against his body for support. The shock he must have given her was far too much for her to handle. Oh, of course. Kurenai replied as she quickly got a hold of herself. Embarrassed at how immature she must have looked. She had promised herself to look after the girls and keep an eye on him. But it looks like she needs to keep an eye on herself as well. Judging from her earlier reaction. Are you sure? Naruto prodded, still keeping a firm hold of her. Yes, I am fine. You can let go of me now. She replied back, a faint blush gracing her cheeks. Then, as though burned, Naruto quickly let her go and took a few steps back. Gomen Nasai. Naruto apologized profusely. Kurenai didn't know whether to be disappointed at how fast he let her go or the fact that he didn't even groped her while he was holding her. It's fine, Naruto. No harm done. Kurenai replied back. Why don't we just head to the market? Naruto only nodded in response. And without further preamble, the pair set off towards Konoha's market district. 3 hours later. Are you sure you bought enough? Yeah, it looked like you brought the whole store. It must be done. Besides, there's the residents' needs to think about. You shouldn't have to go through all these trouble, you know. They can probably shop for their own. I know, but at least they won't have to worry about it later. This way, it will be much more convenient for them. You really amaze me, you know. Naruto suddenly blushed. Well, that's why I'm here for. To make sure that I meet all your needs. Naruto replied back. It's part of being a manager after all. That's easy for you to say. One of Naruto's bunshin responded. Yeah, exclaimed a few other bunshins. You're not the one carrying the groceries. All of Naruto's bunshin grumbled. Shut the hell up, all of you. Naruto shouted at his clones. Stupid, good-for-nothing pack of cry-babies. Naruto muttered under his breath, making Kurenai giggle. Behind Naruto and Kurenai are 5 bunshin clones, all carrying heavy bags of groceries. Each clone carrying at least 4 bags. 1 on each underarm and 1 on each hand. Oi, Naruto, why don't you create more bunshins? These bags ain't exactly lightweight, you know. One of the bunshins complained. Naruto angrily turned around. Baka, if I created more clones then we won't be able to walk through the streets. The market is crowded enough as it is. Who are you calling Baka? Baka, one of the bunshin groused. Stop shouting. No, you stop shouting. Make me. Baka. Who are you calling Baka? Baka. Kurenai couldn't help but laugh. Naruto was arguing with himself. In public. Never thought I'd see the day you'd actually call yourself Baka. Baka. All of the Bunshins ceased all argument when they heard the voice sardonically interrupt them. All of them glared at him. Naruto on the other hand smirked. It's been a long time, dog breath. Inuzuka Kiba stepped into view. Yo Naruto. Great to see you again. Then nodded towards Kurenai. Sensei. Kurenai smiled at her ward. Kiba. To her surprise, Naruto gave her ward a hug. Which in turn, turned to a little roughhousing. What was that for? Kiba groused, finally able to release himself from Naruto's headlock. That's for calling me Baka. Naruto smirked. When did you get back, bro? Kiba asked. He had formed a friendship with the blonde during his short stay at Konoha. Actually all of the Rookie 9 and Team Guy. Just yesterday. Well shoot man. You should have sent word or something. Kiba reprimanded the blonde. Have you caught up with the guys yet? No, not yet. Well listen up. Me and the guys will be meeting tonight at Osamu's hangout. You know the barbecue place where he takes his team all the time. Come by man. Kiba invited. Sure, why not? I'll see you guys there. Naruto replied back enthusiastically. Hey, you're still as loud as ever. Well, I better go and pick up Akamaru from the vet. Be seeing you, Naruto. Sensei. Kiba replied back as he bid his farewell. Naruto on the other hand was positively beaming. It truly was great to be back home. Kurenai watched the blonde at the corner of her eyes. Her heart nearly broke. He was happy. Truly happy. He did not wear his huge grin that he uses on everyone else. Instead it was just a simple smile. A curve on his lips. But his eyes were amazing. It was brighter than before. Its color richer. She had never seen this side of him. His aura was lighter too. She felt it. The happiness that he must be experiencing seeping through her skin. Surrounding her heart with warmth. She wanted nothing more but to see this side of him. She felt a small pang of disappointment of not knowing the blonde more. Perhaps she could help him. Like she helped Hyuga Hinata. The remainder of their shopping trip was quiet. Well, as quiet as it can be between Naruto and Kurenai, but the Bunshins continued to gripe and whine about the amount of bags they carried. Even though there were now another 3 Bunshins added to the mix. Making a total of 8 Bunshins. All in the same state as earlier. Kurenai didn't want to ruin the blonde's happy attitude. She didn't have to. After a few encounters with the other citizens, Naruto's happy cheer began to fade. Kurenai found it amazing how Naruto simply ignored the citizens' jeers and insults. Most of them she knew were spiteful and hurtful. She winced at some of the insults they threw at the blonde. But Naruto remained stoic. His face didn't show any emotion or expression. He ignored them. A few of them were even brave enough to throw rotten tomatoes at them. He simply ignored them. That is until one accidentally hit her. The look he gave them was the most frightening look she has ever seen. His blue eyes became violent red as red chakra began to emanate from his body. The look froze everyone in the immediate area. The culprits responsible emptied their bladders prematurely from fear. The look in his eyes promised a slow and agonizing death. The killer intent he radiated rivaled the ones Kurenai had experienced from the Chunin exams long ago when she watched the preliminaries fight between Subaku Gaara and Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto. Kurenai found herself call his name shakily. She watched him struggle to keep himself in control. He grinded his teeth. His fangs was visible. His whisker mark more pronounced. Listen worm and listen well. Naruto growled. His voice deeper and more menacing. I do not care what you do to me. I can easily let that slide. But don't you ever get an innocent involved, or so help me I will slash your worthless body and choke you with your own insides, then hang you with it. Naruto then turned his attention towards the crowd. That goes for the rest of you. If you all truly wish to test my patience, then so be it. I will enjoy bathing in your blood. Feasting on your dead and worthless carcass. With those words, the crowd parted like the Red Sea, making way for him and his Bunshins. Too terrified of him and what he could do. Kurenai quickly followed him. You shouldn't have let them get to you. Kurenai spoke up, breaking the uneasy silence. She knew that little stunt he pulled would spread like wildfire. They got you, was all Naruto said, not bothering to turn around and speak to her. Kurenai rubbed her shoulder, the part where one of the wayward tomatoes hit her by accident. She watched him and noticed the state of his back. His black shirt was covered by tomato paste. It was also the same on his arms, and she can only guess that it was the same with his front. His hair was a mess as well. The Bunchins fared much better. They avoided the tomato projectiles while still carrying the groceries they held without spilling a drop. I could have easily handled the situation. Kurenai defended. She felt rather guilty for getting him into trouble. She herself was about to tell off the villagers, appalled at how they treated the blonde. She had never known that this is how the villagers treated him. Of course, she knew a few that gossiped and cursed him behind his back, but never knew that he was physically being abused as well. Looking at him, she was amazed at how he reacted. He didn't react because the cruel treatment has gone far enough and that he was sick of the hatred and animosity they showed him. No, he was used to it. No one should be used to such harsh treatment. Looking at him, she could only imagine the animosity and abuse that he had gone through most of his life. Suffered in the same village that he was trying to protect and serve. He only retaliated because she got caught in the firing line. She shuddered at the thought. What if she had not been with him? Would he just endured the abuse? Would he just stood there and let them continue to abuse him emotionally, mentally and physically? Nay, Kurenai-sensei. Do you think the other girls like the stuff I bought for them? He turned around wearing a grin. Kurenai nearly cried. His grin didn't meet his eyes. His eyes had gone duller, as if a part of him died. Naruto, she managed to say. Her words were shaky. Naruto then turned around and looked forward, his hands behind the back of his head, giving anyone who cared enough to look that he was relaxed. But Kurenai knew better. I'm sure they will, she finally managed to say. Yeah, Naruto replied back as he continued to walk. Well, they better. One of the Bunchins spoke up. Yeah, replied the others. Otherwise we will kick your. They all shouted in unison. Naruto turned around and stuck his tongue out at the Bunchins. I'd like to see you guys try. Baka. Naruto angrily retorted to his Bunchins. Fortunately, they were already at the Kunoichi Inn. Hearing the commotion, the other girls came out. Seeing the girls come out, the Bunchins simply placed the bags on the floor. All of them began to crack their knuckles in unison, glaring at Naruto. We're at the inn now, Naruto, one of the Bunchins spoke. It's time for a little payback, the other Bunchin replied. Datbeo. The others agreed. Kurenai merely shook her head as she asked the girls to help her carry the groceries towards the inn. 8 Bunchins charged Naruto. The girls could hear Naruto from the inside of the inn. Hey, watch it, you guys. Not in the house. What do you think you're doing? No. Don't use Rasengan. Baka. All the girls were present except for Temari and Ino. Tenten could hardly believe the amount of groceries Kurenai and Naruto bought from the market. There were in fact 32 bags of groceries. Each Bunchin carried 4 bags each. Wow. Kurenai-san. You and Naruto must have bought the whole store. Tenten remarked excitedly. Isn't this a bit too much, Kurenai? Shizune asked. Who cares? Anko answered. Anko was about to unpack the grocery bags when Kurenai stopped her. Wait until Naruto comes in, Anko. Kurenai said to her friend, stopping Tenten from her tracks as well. Why is that, Kurenai-san? Asked Tenten. She was eager as Anko to unload all groceries and see what they have bought. It was Naruto who went all through the trouble of shopping for us. I think at least 2 bags go to each resident of the inn and the rest is just food and necessities for the inn. Kurenai answered. He did what? Anko replied back, flabbergasted that the blonde brought each of the residences presents. Naruto-kun. Hinata whispered in shock. Her affection for the blonde grew. He was just too thoughtful for words. Shizune only sighed. She always knew Naruto was thoughtful, but he kind of went little bit overboard with the shopping. She could only guess that he had used most of his pay for groceries. It was a sweet and kind gesture nonetheless. Tenten couldn't believe that a guy she barely knew bought so much stuff for them. She was flattered that he thought about them. She couldn't help but be impressed with the blonde's kind gesture. It was then that the object of their thoughts walked into the room, looking worse for wear. They watched him enter with a melancholy look upon his face. Naruto, feeling that everyone's attention was upon his person, instantly brought a grin upon his face. And for a split second anyone who cared enough to look would have been mistaken that the frown was ever present. It was gone before anyone could even question him about it. Kurenai wanted to reach out to him and try and comfort him but restrained herself. She didn't know what she could possibly say to him. Naruto gave everyone a sheepish smile. Sorry about these ladies. Guess I have to go and get cleaned up. He informed them when he noticed they were looking at his state of dress. He was still covered with the gunk the villagers threw at him at the market square. On top of that, his clothing was torn from his little squabble with his bunchins. He absent-mindedly scratched the back of his head before heading towards the stairs and directly up his room, leaving the rest of the residents in their own thoughts. Sue, do we unpack the bags or what? Anko asked, breaking the silence. Fine. I'll tell you which bags to unpack. The rest would remain packed. It's better that Naruto give it to you in person. Kurenai suggested. They'll have to unload the food and store them away. The rest could wait till later. As they began to unpack the food, Shizune stood beside Kurenai. She then began to ask Kurenai about Naruto, keeping her voice down as to not alert the other girls. Anko, Hinata and Tenten on the other hand were busy talking about the amount of food and supplies and what to do with them. What happened? Shizune asked. Worried about Naruto. Kurenai frowned, and then sighed. Trust me Shiz, you don't want to know. Naruto on the other hand was still seething. The fight with his bunchins elevated some of his aggression but it wasn't enough. His thoughts were still fixed on what had happened earlier. He was getting sick and tired of the treatment he received. While he was happy to have returned to his village and meeting his old friends, he still couldn't help but feel depressed that the village's animosity has not lessened since he left. Nothing has changed. He went to take a shower and tried to avert his troublesome thoughts elsewhere. But it was too hard. Memories from his childhood began to resurface. He could feel the sticks, stones and blade as it pierced his skin. He could still smell the burning scent of his flesh as the village continued to try and kill him. They tried everything. From poison, violence, arson and torture. He remembered running for his life and running through the streets, while the rest of the people only jeered, stood there and watched as he begged for them to stop. He ran as far as his little legs could carry him, finally finding sanctuary in the arms of the Sandaime, Sarutobi. He remembered losing consciousness in his arms as the pain in his battered body intensified. Tears began to mix with the cascading water of the shower. He remembered waking up on a hospital bed with the Sandaime watching over him. It was then that he had met Jiraiya. The bruises in his body healed. The visible scars in his skin vanished. But the ache in his heart never faded. There were just scars that went too deep and etched itself within his heart. He leaned his head against the cold tile wall while his hands were flat against it. Trying to hold himself up, he didn't notice his hands slowly became fists, nor did he notice they were turning white as tears continued to mix with the cascading water. Kyuubi for once kept its thoughts and mouth closed. Kyuubi could see the images as it flashed through Naruto's mind. Kyuubi wanted nothing more than to decimate the entire village and watched everyone that had wronged Naruto hang by their own entrails. To watch the whole village burn down and hear their screams of agony and pain. To watch them beg for their lives. Could they not see that the human boy was their savior? The only thing that was stopping Kyuubi from destroying them. How could they treat the boy so? Foolish humans, was all Kyuubi could say. Damn these mortals and their foolish lives. Did they not know how close they came into their own destruction? Naruto finally wrenched himself from his painful thoughts. He needed to work the rage out of his system. With that thought, he quickly got dressed and disposed his shirt in the nearby waste bin. There was no point in trying to mend the ruined clothes. It will only fuel his rage more and will serve as a reminder of how the village viewed him. He was just putting his combat boots on when Shizune knocked on his door. Naruto, she called tentatively. Come in, Nichan. He replied back without taking his attention off tying his laces. Shizune slid the door open and found Naruto already dressed. He doesn't seem as energetic as this morning. Nor did he have the same vibrancy as he first arrived. He was more subdued now. More rigid. She sat next to him on his bed. Naruto didn't look at her and simply continued to finish putting his shoes on. Naruto, she said. She tentatively reached out to him. As her hand began to touch his back, she felt him stiffen. She could have sworn she saw him wince. She began to rub his back as to comfort him. What happened? She asked. Worried at his reaction, he remained silent. Talk to me, Naruto, she asked softly, only to met by his silence once again. Shizune felt her heart break. She knew something was wrong. So without thinking about it, she wrapped her arms around him. She felt him stiffen once more. I need to train. Naruto spoke, but his voice quivered. His mind still had flashes of images of abuse from his childhood. Come back to us, Naruto. Shizune heard herself say. She didn't know why, but she felt that the Naruto in her arms was not the same Naruto she knew. I will be fine, Nichan. Naruto replied back as he untangled her arms around him before looking her in the eyes. I will be fine, Nichan. Don't worry. I will smile again. You'll see. He reassured her, even though he could feel his eyes begin to sting. He gave her one of his patented grins. The one that says there's nothing to worry about, even though deep inside he felt like his heart was ripping into pieces. She saw his blue orbs begin to water as he looked away. He then got up and left the room without a second glance nor another word. At that moment Shizune knew she was crying as she watched the blonde leave the room, his back becoming blurry and obscured because of tears that ran down her cheeks. Konoha Forest Training Grounds. Temari didn't feel like going back to the inn. She wanted to train and enjoy the lush color the Konoha Forest provided. Back in her country, everything was sand. Sand as far as the eye can see. The weather changed drastically from scorching heat to blistering colds. The winds cuts through the skin like razor-sharp knives. Unlike Konoha, the weather was fair and it was peaceful. She ran through the forests enjoying the sights and scents of the trees and flowers. The sounds of wildlife that frolicked throughout the grounds. She thanked her little brother for approving her decision at remaining at Konoha and becoming the Leaf and Sands ambassador. She loved the wind against her skin as she ran and explored the forest. That is until a loud noise interrupted her leisurely run. She frowned as she began to feel a great amount of chakra build up at east side of the forest. It was at the training grounds. Whoever was training was sure training really hard to emit that kind of chakra. Perhaps they wouldn't mind sparring with me for a while. With that thought, Temari began to head towards the east side of the forest towards the training grounds. Naruto watched his opponents. 50 bunchins were now reduced to 34. It wasn't bad. He had only used taijutsu so far and had not used any of his flashier jutsus. He wanted to release his aggression and rage. He wanted to use his fists. His bunchins had used Rasengan against him. He had avoided their attacks by using them against the others, dodging and feinting. Others began to use fire jutsus as well. He felt his blood pumping through his veins as adrenaline fueled his excitement. He was sweating profusely and he could taste his own blood against his lips. He could feel Kyuubi's excitement and demanded that he use its chakra, but Naruto refused. He wanted to release his aggression, nothing more. He saw his bunchins move and he leapt from his crouching position and began to attack. Temari stopped in her tracks when she saw who the figure was. It was none other than Uzumaki Naruto. She knew she should leave, but she was entranced by the sight of the battle before her. She watched fascinated as she saw dozens of clones charged at the worse for wear Naruto. She guessed the scruffy-looking one must be the original since all the other clones were charging at it. She watched as the clones used fire jutsus and various chakra energy attacks, while Naruto used taijutsu and ninjutsu. She watched him move and was awed by how fast he was. She saw how he dodged and avoided the attacks while only suffering minor injuries. One by one the clones began to puff in non-existence as he exchanged blows with his clones. She was so preoccupied in watching him that she didn't see the Rasengan hit the tree she was perched at until it was too late. Temari gave out a startled yelp as she began to fall towards the ground. She was too surprised to act and braced herself for a painful landing. She closed her eyes and readied herself for the impact. But to her surprise she didn't feel the hard ground. Rather she felt warm and secure. She felt like she was flying. She opened her eyes only to see herself in his arms. She felt a soft jolt, informing her that they had landed. But Naruto didn't let her go. Rather he faced the last of his clones. Baka, watch where you're aiming, Naruto admonished his clone. He was lucky to have caught Temari in mid-fall. I didn't know she was there. The clone replied back testily. Naruto didn't say another word and simply cancelled his clone. The clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Moron, Naruto muttered under his breath. He then checked Temari in his arms, inspecting for any incurred injuries. Temari blushed at such close perusal. She could feel his blue eyes examine her body. She was too aware of his strong arms around her, causing chaotic feelings within her. She had not been close to another male since Shikamaru, and even then he didn't dare hold her like this for the fear of what her brothers, more precisely Gaara, could do to him. Temari-chan, are you okay? Naruto asked, his voice soft and full of worry. He couldn't believe he was so engrossed in the fight that he didn't pay attention to his surroundings. He only became aware of her presence when he heard her yelp. I'm fine, Naruto. She managed to say, surprised that she sounded so unlike herself. Her voice sounded so unsure. Naruto frowned. Are you sure? You don't sound fine, he questioned as he looked at her more intensely. I would be fine if you would stop looking at me like that. Temari found herself saying. She sounded breathless. His eyes were like sapphires and she found herself drowning in them. Sorry. Naruto apologized before setting her on the ground carefully. Like she was fine glass. He wanted to make sure she didn't hurt herself. Thank you. Temari replied back as she tried to restore her composure. She didn't know how to act around him. Seeing firsthand what he could do against Gaara made her terrified of him. Watching him training sent shivers up and down her spine. He looked like he pushed himself too hard. Judging from his form, he must have been facing more than the clones she had seen before she arrived. The way he dispatched them simply by using pure taijutsu and ninjutsu alone was outstanding and amazing. The fact that he could still stand further amazed her. Just what type of human was Uzumaki Naruto? He dusted himself off and then offered a hand towards her. She simply looked at the hand and then hesitantly put her hand on his. She felt a mild electric jolt run through her body and she visibly shivered. Naruto thought she needed extra help since she seemed like she was in shock and have trouble standing up, so he jerked her up. Unfortunately he didn't know his own strength, for he tugged her a little too hard. She stood up all right, but not before slamming against his rock-solid chest, loosing his balance and making him fall flat on his back while she landed on top of him. PPPFFF. Thud. Hey, I guess I didn't know my own strength, he told her while blushing furiously. All the while praying she won't kill him. He gave an awkward laugh just to try and defuse the situation. Temari blushed furiously. She bit her lower lip, trying to fight the reaction of snuggling closer to him. His arms were around her waist. He must have wrapped his arms around her to save her from the fall. And somehow she didn't want him to let go. She just wanted him to hold her like this. It had been so long since she was held like this. He was so warm and comfortable. He also smelled so good. She could smell his shampoo mixing with sweat making her heady. She could feel her heart race and she could have sworn she could almost hear both their heartbeats as though it was trying to synchronize with each other. Temari-chan, Not that I'm complaining or anything, but do you mind getting off me now? Naruto asked tentatively. The way she was looking at him was making him all too aware of their situation. He could already tell that blood was now pumping in his lower regions, and pretty soon he was sure she would be able to feel his tent. Like lightning, Tamari got off the blonde. They both blushed and remained silent, unsure what to actually say to each other. Naruto, Tamari began, but caught herself. What could she possibly say to him after this? You fight good, she found herself saying. You fight good. You fight good. Good God, I've lost the capacity to think coherently. Her mind screamed. Thanks. Naruto replied back as he gave her one of his foxy grins. Maybe we could spar some time. He replied back as he once again got up. He offered his hand once again. This time she only gave him a lopsided grin and shook her head. Yeah, maybe we can, she replied back. Glad that she finally gotten her composure back. She began to dust herself off and stood up on her own. She then turned to face him and had to take a double take. The scrapes that was around his face had started to heal and had stopped bleeding. Dashta, what's wrong? Do I have something in my face? Naruto asked. His only reply was Tamari stepping into his personal space and caressed his cheek. Unaware of what she was actually doing. Your cuts, they've stopped bleeding. She answered him as her eyes narrowed in concentration, bringing her face closer to his to inspect him more closely. Her fingers tracing his cuts. Naruto winced, which made Tamari withdrew her hand. He could see she was puzzled by this and decided to tell her the excuse Jiraiya had taught him long ago when asked about his healing factor. All the while blushing at such an intimate contact. He was not used to having any sort of contact with another person. It was because they mostly want to maim him. The only contact he was used to was Shizune and Tsunade, and even then it doesn't happen a lot. It's a family bloodline. Naruto answered her. You mean a bloodline limit? Tamari clarified. She knew only few of the bloodlines. Residing in Konoha enabled her to learn more about them. She fought the urge to try and trace his cuts with her fingertips, to make sure what he said was true. Another reason she was trying to stop was the rising desire to touch his warm skin. Yeah, my bloodline limit is healing. I can heal myself in rapid speed. He answered. He didn't want to elaborate more since he really didn't like to lie. Though technically it wasn't a lie, since it was technically true, though it was more because of Kyuubi. I see. Tamari replied back. Naruto's answer just gave her the answer she was looking for. It explained a lot. No wonder he could stand up against her brother Gaara. Only a person with a healing factor could withstand her brother's attack because of the amount of damage he could cause. It must be a pretty strong bloodline to be able to survive Gaara's attack in ultimate form. With his bloodline limit, he could easily become a super soldier. So what are you doing out here anyways? Are you training as well? He asked nonchalantly. Tamari valued her privacy a lot and bristled against his prying question. It's none of your business. She snapped back at him before realizing who she was talking to. The guy that defeated her brother. She saw him flinch and stiffen at her response. She could have sworn she saw something in his eyes before it quickly vanished and was replaced by a neutral stare. There were no longer warmth in his eyes. I mean, don't worry about it, Tamari-chan. Sorry I asked. He replied back before turning his back to her. I have to go back to the inn and get washed up. I just remembered I'm meant to meet with the guys at the restaurant. I'll just see you later. He replied back, bidding his farewell. Yane. Naruto, wait. Tamari called. She didn't mean to sound bitchy. She wanted to explain herself, but it was too late. Naruto had left. Tamari stood there in the middle of the training ground. She was alone. The wind blew past her hair, carrying the scents of the flowers and leaves. She could hear the wildlife as they frolicked through the forest, but somehow it wasn't the same anymore. She just felt empty, cold and alone. Naruto dashed through the forest back to the village. He jumped from one tree branch to another. His mind was racing. Questions plagued his head. He and Tamari were getting along so well, so why did she suddenly wanted to bite his head off? He shook his head. Sakura was the same. He remembered the many times he conversed with his teammate years ago. She was nice one minute and violent the next. It was the same deal with Tsunade. We're all women like this. For the life of him, he would never understand women. You and me both, Kit. You and me both. Kyuubi agreed. But Temari's response to his simple question only managed to remind him of how much people loathed him. Was he really that despicable and annoying? You have your days, Kit. Kyuubi answered him. I wasn't talking to you. Naruto replied back. Who else are you talking to? Yourself. I don't think I can handle hearing more voices in here, Kit. Kyuubi mocked him. Or could it be that insistent hawk hovering above you? Naruto looked up. True enough, there was a summoning bird hovering above him. Naruto frowned. It seemed he was being summoned towards the Hokage Tower.